welcome to this roundup. Since the beginning of times, we humans have been creating tools to help us interact with the world around us. Now we are moving inward and developing the tools to help us interact with the world inside us. While the nature of tools has evolved from physical to digital and now neural, our brain is effectively becoming the tool for interaction, communication, and influence. From electrode being implanted in the human brain to transmit and receive signals to non-invasive gadgets that translate brainwaves into commands that control not only computer but also body parts are already becoming a reality. As a result, the thought of any technology that can be weaponized and used for manipulation of brainwaves to change human behavior or control human behavior is becoming terrifying. So the question that needs to be evaluated is not whether this emerging mind control technology can be weaponized, but when, how, and by who. To discuss mind control technology further, I'm honored to welcome Professor Newton Howard to this roundup. Professor Newton Howard is a brain and cognitive scientist. He is the former director of the MIT Mind Machine Project and is currently a professor at Computational Neuroscience and Functional Neurosurgery at the University of Oxford, where he directs the Oxford Computational Neuroscience Laboratory. Welcome, Professor Howard. We are honored to have you on this roundup.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful, Professor Howard. So each layer of cyberspace evolved our potential to connect. Now, cyberspace has connected aquaspace, geospace, and space, and has also connected individuals and entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia. Now we are moving towards developing a brain net, and it seems there is a rat race to developing the brain-computer interface. While connecting our brains directly into the web seems both very exciting and terrifying, where are we going as the brain-computer interface evolves further?
Certainly the ability to use brain-computer interfaces devices as an IoT and assume an IoT of the brain, brain-to-brain net, if you will, is becoming a reality in the near future. To date, the technology is only capable of certain therapeutic effect as it's used as a deep brain stimulators. And certainly the classes of technology that exist today does not have the adequate security to accommodate for the risk.
Yes, very true. I mean, what you just described, the brain-to-brain, communication happening in the interface, that is one development, and then there is the other one that is brain-to-computer interface. So there are two different, parallel developments happening, and it seems the brain-computer interface has advanced a little more than brain-to-brain interface, and there are many great potentials because you can use the technology for education system. You can use it for communicating and once we develop the brain-to-brain interface further, there will be no need for web, there will be no need for computers, there will be no need for phones. So it is, going to be very disruptive, it is going to be very transformative, and there are great benefits. But what is the current state of the brain-to-brain interface? Where exactly are we in the development? Is it still very early stages, or we have reached a commercialization potential?
Brain-to-brain interface is much more difficult than the brain-computer interface between a machine and the brain, for the reason that understanding the actual brain language or the currency that is communicated at the neuronal level, it's something which requires substantial further work. While the brain-machine interface, the ability to connect your neurons, has kind of leaped into the ability to connect to tens of thousands of neurons. We're still further away from connecting with 1 million neurons at a time, or perhaps the entire brain.
Right. That's very interesting. So, I mean, irrespective of whether it's brain-computer interface or brain-to-brain interface, it seems that the integration of AI is happening in both the different pathways that we are moving forward, and the possibility of being connected to AI would mean that our actions will flow less from our own judgments and thoughts and what's in our best interest, and more from what data and algorithms have decided, which is that could be best for us. So how do you see this shifting the human narrative, the human lives in the coming years?
If we actually to adopt brain-computer interfaces at the appropriate level and adequate security, obviously, and consideration of the ethics of use and ethics of development, we can have a relatively strong therapeutic platform for various disorders, especially neurodegenerative and others. Leaping from there, if the device were to be used for brain augmentation, then we are looking at a completely different type of modality of use that requires a completely different level and a completely different ethical review. One is about 5 years away, and augmentation is more like 10 to 15 years away. The augmentation in itself is not a bad use case for brain-computer interface or brain-to-brain interfaces. It is just the ability to control the genie out of the bottle, if you will, when it comes to other uses that requires further review.
Yes, absolutely. Now, it seems that EEG, the electroencephalogram, has emerged as a promising way for paralyzed patients to control devices like computers or wheelchairs by wearing a cap, and undergoing training to learn to control a device like wheelchair by imagining that they are moving a part of their body or triggering commands with specific mental tasks. Is there still a need to wear a cap or have an electrode implanted in the brain, or we have moved further that where we can just have small tiny device or something like wearable in our head, and we can communicate brain to brain, or we can communicate brain to computer?
So the EEG use has been very much exhausted as a brain-computer interface. The next phase is the intrusive phase, which is the ability to actually read and write by implanting electrodes and optrodes and various shapes, planar, as well as the actual pin type. The ability to leap to the next level is determined by how much information we understand about the signal pathway and connectivity, and basically retract that into a neuron of origin or a function of or a space of function of origin, and then being able to track that back to the organ or the area where you're mounting the patch and whatnot.
Right. Now, the AI uses the combination of the brain waves and the sensor data to work out what to do and what will happen next. So, how is this interpretation achieved, if we talk in the scientific terms?
So you basically collect the data from the brain in the case of the intrusive method or the method where you're connecting LFBs. You're connecting to the neuron zone, and you're collecting the electrophysiology or the electrical activity in that area, isolating a spike train, time, intensity, duration, wavelengths, and reprocess that information into some level of feature analysis or a support vector or a learning algorithm, and compute from there some inferences of value to the function specificity of that zone, and then use that understanding of the function and specificity of that zone to redirect a stimulation recipe or a modulation that can correct whatever anomaly that we're seeing in that area.
That's very interesting. So, brain to brain, if we evaluate that, what is the current state of communication possible? Is it possible to communicate like full sentences, or is it just some words at this point?
We at the moment in my group have spinned out a company from Oxford called NI2O, neurons input output, and we are able to develop a device that read and write in modality real time. Thereby, it depends on where it's placed. So if it's placed in the Brock and Wernick, you would be able to cipher things like full sentences.
Oh, that's very interesting. So, what are your what other initiatives that you are working on, especially your lab? What other topics or what problems you are trying to solve through the research?
We concern ourselves with three things: something we refer to as the brain code, something we refer to as the fundamental code unit, and the device that collects and read and write utilizing the BC and FCU. Um, One enables us to understand the disease state as a code breaking system, if you will, and the other allows us to understand the currency of exchange and the communication exchange model of the actual neuronal level activities.
Oh, that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. So now, if we look back, since 1780s, I believe, when Galvani discovered these electrical currents and laid the foundations of modern neurophysiology, we have learned to use electrical technology, electrophysiology to study, so many different problems or pathways or the anatomy and the structure and metabolism and physiology of the the brain, human brain. So if we look at it broadly, where are we in terms of advances in the technology aspect that we're using digital electroencephalogram systems, EEG systems? We can use human brain as a biosensor, but have we moved past the EEG? Have we come up with new technologies that can help us advance the brain science and neuroscience, and give us a better understanding of the complex, neural pathways, what causes, the mental health problems, or what causes, how, when we are doing any activity, what kind of, neural changes that happens, what kind of neural spikes happen, and when the stroke happens, how, the neurons are deactivated, degenerated, and then what we can do. So those kind of problems to solve, to understand that and to solve those complex problems, do we need new technologies, or we have what we need and we will be able to just need more time to solve all those problems?
Certainly, EEG has not growing out of its use, if you will, and it will be here for a while. The resolution of EEG is not at the level or at the resolution that we would desire. There's a spatiotemporal resolution of a different scale that requires different type of equipment like MRI, fMRI, PET scan, and whatnot. The problem is in the size of these scanners and the fact that they are not following the patient during ADL or activities of daily living. During ADL, a revelation of the various functional structures and the various structural relevance of the brain comes into play. And unfortunately, unless you are able to develop a microscopy at the level that you can be carrying the brain in the field of microscopy during the ADL, you will not be able to see everything at the appropriate resolution. So we're far away from that. There have been ideas of using nanoscale structures and do what's called uh, a back propagation, back scan, and whatnot, but it's not really at the size that is desired.
Yes, yes. No, that's I understand. It's a really important point, and I hope that we develop more technologies that can help us advance further. But if we look at bioelectrical signals, it can stunt or grow brain tissue, and the human body's electrical activity seems to be based on the relative concentration of salts, the level of salt, in the body, and based on the advances in understanding, it is now possible. It's said that it's now possible to identify a person with the bioelectrical activity of the brain with 100% success. So my question is, does everyone have different bioelectrical activity in his or her brain? And if it is, then would this create a problem as we try to develop the neural, communication, person to person, brain to brain, and we are trying to advance, the communication, and we are trying to do many activities, using brain to brain communication, and try to, just override the internet, or try to override the phone's communication system, and much more. Do you think that would play any significant role in as we try to advance this technology further?
Well, think of it this way: the brain has something like similar to Morse code, with fixed numbers of letters. You're able to orchestrate a very sophisticated communication and convey substantial meanings. Or similar to the DNA, where you have four variables, but then you can construct all kind of structures from that. That's essentially what we're facing here when we refer to as the brain code, the exhibited brain code, or overtly expressed brain code from the brain, and the fundamental code unit, which is the currency exchange. These are fixed variables, the meaning and what's being conveyed, and the structure that is being created. The brain is interesting in the sense that you would have white matter and gray matter that looks the same, in everybody, but yet creates this tremendous difference between one person and another. The white structures also looking the same, but exhibiting outwardly functions that are completely and vastly different. These are fundamental questions that is still substantially in the works.
Yes.
And when you think of the journey of the brain as a journey of over 1,000 years, as we can date it, it goes back to Plato, Aristotle, and Raphaelis, and what they were doing in that area, and trying to understand where is the faculty of the mind presides. And they settled and concluded back then that it's in the gut, in the heart, and in the brain, or what we call the current brain. The advancement from that notion hasn't leaped much, because recent publication has been talking about the significance of the gut and the significance of the gut flora in relation to the brain, and the relation between the gut flora and the gut and disorders like Parkinson. So we are rediscovering what has been already agreed upon over 1,000 years. So we
Yes.
haven't really moved far.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, these are very complex, questions. And I was thinking, that in right now we are focusing only on, especially for humans, we are focusing only on our brain, that it is the center of the activity. But like you just said, now we are also coming up with new, knowledge that, the gut flora also plays a role. And if you look at the octopus, then we see that, they have not just one brain, but I mean, they have one central brain, but they also have, in each of their tentacle, they have, a separate brain. So, I mean, it's possible that we still have not understood our, human system properly. I mean, it's possible that even our heart, or even our limbs, there are, small neural cells everywhere, that are controlling, the movement. So there is still a lot to understand, and it's fascinating, So in the coming years, what we are able to understand, what discoveries are made, and what technology, helps us to advance this further. It's going to be very fascinating, the knowledge that we receive and the intelligence that we get from that. But since the day we discovered that neurons convey information via electrical spikes, which can be recorded with a thin metal wire, so it's, very easy. So, and now, using computers and, AI, it's much easier now to record, all these electrical spikes that are happening, neural spike, because of the neural activity. How far do you think the research has come, and where exactly we need to focus? I mean, you discussed, that, the complexities now with the gut flora, and, other parts that, that are developments that are happening. But from your assessment, where we need to focus broadly to be able to understand, the human mind and mind control, even more in an accurate way, probably.
Well, there's a lot of room for understanding and ciphering and mining the data in the noise space of the data. Our technology has not grown to the ability to make sense of all of that is captured, but only a very few and a very small amount of what's captured is being understood and ciphered. So focusing in that space can yield a lot. The risk and the security and ethical implication aspect requires further dialogues on the appropriateness of certain use cases, the limitation over the scope of these use cases, the control over the privacy aspect, or the management over the privacy aspect, if you will, and the control of the security aspect is yet to be completely debated, and some policies be put in place to manage that.
Yes,
I'd say everyday technology that we use in our life can be used for good and can be used for bad.
yes,
And it's quite interesting that the device that articulate and guide and command that very much is the brain, which is at the center of the act itself.
yes.
So
Yeah, very true. These are all dual use technologies. So we have to, I mean, it has great transformative potential and we'll be able to do a lot of good with these technologies. But if we are not mindful and if we don't prepare ourselves properly, then, yes, a lot of security risk will emerge from that and it can be used for bad. But if you talk about the neurons that convey information via these electrical spikes, have we reached a stage where we can understand the language of spikes or the language of neurons? Because each of these are all electrical spikes only, and using AI, deep learning, machine learning, we should be able to, in the coming years, if not now, in the coming years, we can probably define the whole language. How these spikes happen, when it happens, and what each spike, and how the space between there, or the duration or the intensity, each of that could be just like alphabets, it could be a language that we can develop. And if we are able to develop the language of neurons, then I mean, there is so much that can come out, and there are enormous security risks that can emerge, because anybody with that language or that control can control the entire human population around them.
that is true. So the work we've been doing and ongoing on fundamental code unit aims very much to achieve that objective and beyond. To date, we can understand parts of that currency, part of that exchange mechanisms, the geometry around it, and the modalities that are around it, the number of modalities, the relevant signatures, the relevant features. And we published that work in several volumes of writing, some that is patented and some is academic publishing. And I encourage the readers, the viewers, to Google fundamental code unit of the brain to reach some of those publications.
Oh, that would be great. I'm sure, there are a lot of our viewers and listeners who would love to, understand that more, and they will, they will benefit from the information that you just shared. Now, it seems that recording the electrical activity of just a few dozen cells in the brain can provide us a fairly accurate picture of how someone intends to move, their arm, or their head, or what action they're going to take. So how are we advancing our understanding of reading these electrical activity that can give us an ability to know what action will happen even before it happens?
So that sits at the core of having the ability to place within the region of interest a brain-computer interface device that is able to record and simultaneously stimulate or remodulate the necessary and coherent modulation pattern to correct some of the deficit that is generated in that initial spike, or the spike train, or the the message that is being communicated between neurons. We've been working on such a device, and we refer to it as the Kiwi. And the Kiwi is a chip, a sensing chip, as well as a system on a chip that enables that read and write modality simultaneously from a particular region of projection or region of interest that we believe that may have a problem, or we're trying to address a problem. In the case, in concrete cases, like where we place the device in the subthalamic nucleus to work on Parkinson, for example.
So this chip that you have designed, will it have two-way communication or just one-way communication? You said read and write, but the read and
Yeah,
write both ways. Okay.
it is two-way communication. It communicates directly with the neurons in the zone of projection where it's placed by sensing the electrophysiological and activities and the chemical viscosity of the or concentration, if you will, for certain neurotransmitters, and then recreate the necessary solution to bring that zone into harmonic frequency that integrates it back into the rest of the brain when it's in the first order is plagued and is not functioning properly.
So what is the distance that is required for the chip to be able to read and write? Is it does it need to be on the head, or does it need? It can be like several feet, or how far it can be and still be able to read and write.
It is actually placed inside the brain up to layer 5.
Oh, so it's embedded inside.
Yeah, it's embedded within up to layer 5. It's chronic, meaning that you don't have to take it out. It then communicates internally and externally. Internally with the neurons to do the correction, and externally to a PDA system or a mobile device system or the cloud to integrate with the master operating system and resync to update drivers, update software, etc.
That's very interesting. So is it something like a molecular chip? Is it that small or a
It
little bit
is one.
larger?
It is 1.9 by 2.2 millimeter, about the size of a grain of rice.
That's very interesting. I mean, then we can probably download all kinds of education. I mean, knowledge that we want. You can update. I mean, upload, not download. You can do a lot of things. There will. I think probably education institutions will be outdated. Once we go further in this, because with just having that chip, you can transmit all kinds of knowledge, and there is not going to be any need for any professors or educational systems. We
There
are.
will there will be needs always for tacit and different type of activities for learning, because
Yes.
learning is inefficient in one modality and is very efficient in various modalities. The education is interesting. You mentioned education. Education, as we know it today, is struggling already with the
Yes.
classes of technology that exist and the amount of information that is available. When you used to be, if you need knowledge in physics is limited to being able to go to the tutor on physics or your teacher only, and now you have anything from Khan Academy to several other learning methods and toys and things that you can buy on the market and whatnot. It makes subject like physics more fun. It makes it more available. It makes it more integrated into activities of life. It give it another meaning other than it is that thing that I notionally have on the list of things to do to graduate high school or to graduate college and whatnot. So it's a fundamental shift that is taking place right now, and then there's a second wave when you can have a brain-computer interface mediated learning, if you will. Yeah.
That is amazing, because that is a necessary shift. Like, as we all know, I mean, the education system is struggling, and it's very ineffective, and it takes years, and it's this one standard educational plan for every student doesn't work. So with this kind of advances, we'll be able to customize it, and help each child learn it in a very interactive, in a very fun way, and attain the potential that the child is supposed to attain. So this is very fundamental and very necessary, and I look forward to seeing the advances there. But now, if we talk about, as you just described, about the chip, that it will be embedded in the brain, the small size chip, and it has both read and write capabilities. Now, as we see, scientists have been building better and better decoders, the software to interpret the neuronal signals. So over the years, there are a lot of advances in decoding this. So that has enabled us to experiment with more ambitious control schemes. So do you see that we, as far as the interpretation of the signal goes, and the decoders goes, that we are having effective decoding system, or we still need to advance there? And if we need to advance, where exactly do you think are the challenges and where we need to focus? This is more so that this discussion, because a lot of young students also listen our risk roundup, and from all across nations, and everybody is so passionate right now. If you see not only millennials, but all different generations, that they want to contribute, they want to provide wherever, help wherever they can, so, to solve the problems facing humanity. And these kind of questions are more towards, so they get some guidance that where are the challenges, so they can work towards that, and they can try to help innovate and contribute towards solving the problems.
There's a lot of advances that is required in that space, in decoding space, if you will. A lot of synchronism and collaboration that is required between researchers. I would say that we will see leaps beyond what we have today in the next 7 to 10 years in vertical and horizontal AI as it emerge. And from that emergence, there will be tools and more critical mathematics that needs to be answered to get to the level where we can seamlessly say that we understand what's happening in region X of the brain. It's communicating Y and so forth. But I'm optimistic that that work will come, and we will see it during our lifetime.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, one point I have been thinking about, since we agreed that we are going to talk about this topic, is that, any intent that any of us have, that we want to take a left turn or a right turn while driving, or, doing any action like lifting a cup or whatever, that intent, is taken, the message is communicated immediately, and the AI takes over in certain areas where AI, there is a shared control with the AI chip or the system, and AI takes over that. Yes, this person wants to take a left turn or a right turn, and you know takes a decision based on that, to so that no accidents happen if they're driving car, or if somebody is in wheelchair, then that the person wants to move the wheelchair to right or left, depending on the task that the AI, the human, wants to take. But I have been thinking about this, that with this kind of shared controls, now humans would not need to continuously instruct a wheelchair to move forward, or to drive a car or anything. You just give one message, and the AI picks over, the AI software picks over, and takes the decision. So the decision then does not is not taken by the humans, it's taken by the AI. So now humans, as we know, that no, not everyone has the control over their mind, the control over their thoughts. One second, somebody think that, okay, I want to exit here, then next second say, no, I don't want to exit here, let me just drive further, and then I will take an exit. So in those kind of scenarios, I mean, humans, most of the humans we know are not very decisive in their actions, or even in their thought process. The thoughts, fluctuate. The thoughts, change, every second, if I may say. So in those circumstances, if by merely thinking, 1 second and then AI takes over, would that not trigger, some kind of conflicts or some kind of accidents or, security risk? Because human mind is very, not very decisive in a lot of areas.
Right. So when it comes to action, a physical action of say driving a car, your engagement with the vehicle to command it to say go down the street to a supermarket, it involves a volitional, an act of volition and an act of deliberate plan. That architecture, if you will, is loaded into a cognitive space where you're then acting and breaking this instruction into a smaller action of guiding that vehicle into the physical space, which has been plotted already by a level of autonomic type of construct, and all the way to the end action where you're pulling to the final parking lot, say going to the a store in a market or whatnot. Um, that whole action architecture is created at the time when you acted that you're going to that market. All of that. And all of that is loaded, if you will, in the various region of interest that are going to guide that action through. And your volitional and your control mechanisms kick in to act on the individual decisions. Do I go to the road that goes on the right or to the road that goes on the left? Which one is more efficient in direction? Is efficiency in direction matters to me, or am I avoiding traffic? So the level of autonomy is wide. The canvas is wide, and in the canvas of this action, a lot of decisions have already been made and reloaded. It's only a matter of correcting segments or fragments of this order architecture that comes during the time of the act itself. So the system, autonomous level driving systems have these type of volitional setting and mechanisms to accommodate the naturalistic process of the same apparatus.
So, do you think we will need to develop controls and put in place so that unwanted thoughts are not sent to, our brain, or, unwanted thoughts from our brain uh, are not sent to the AI? Because every human being has, we all have dual thoughts. I mean, most of the time we have good thoughts, but there are days, everybody has bad thoughts. They want to do something, that normally they wouldn't do. And I mean, a lot of them commit suicide, a lot of them, commit murder. A lot of different activities, happens because of that momentary lapse of, control over their brain and the thought process. So when we are integrating this human mind with the AI, and the AI taking over, then, and fulfilling that task or desire, then I think, we will need to put some sort of controls in place, so that, we will have to train AI that if there are, this kind of dark thoughts, then, give it time, or, some sort of process needs to be there
Right.
before it, commits that kind of action. So do you think we are working towards that?
They're all dependent on the authoring of the code itself. There's some authors of the code would integrate what's called affective computing methods, or people that would include volitional and intentional methods, people that would include personality characteristics into the code. So it all depending on integrating these libraries and what is your goal, your end goal. If your end goal is to have a robot drive you from point A to point B, avoiding obstacles and collision, and you using a collision avoidance system that is sophisticated to have volitional decisions between notions of risk, between notions of making decisions over do I hit a tree or I hit a human. A lot of that work is obviously is in place right now and taking place, and it has to incorporate filtering mechanisms, secondary overrides to the decisions of the machine, control, override, so forth. And I'm sure that you see some of that. We'll see some of that coming on the road in the next few months, not even few years.
That would be very welcoming,
Uh,
because we do need to develop some sort of, like you said, operating, system. But code is the operating system, right? I mean, if we not only for the cyberspace, but also for any of these augmented systems that we develop, any of the technology, that wherever we use any software, wherever we use AI. So if code is the constitution, then we need to make sure that the security controls are embedded in the code, so that we can prevent this kind of imminent disasters, because human mind is very fluid, and we cannot uh, be confident that every second, every signal, every thought that is generated is going to be for the good and for the future of the humanity. I mean, that could create a lot of dangerous things. So what you just said is very welcoming. Now, another thing I was thinking is that you talked about the chip that is being going to be augmented in the brain, implanted in the brain. Now there are also some who wear just a skull cap, and there are wearables will also come in the coming years. So there are going to be many different kinds of these interfaces that we'll be using to achieve the mind control technology. Now, when we try to capture anything, irrespective of what technology we use, what form of technology, that is cheap or wearable or any skull cap, when we try to capture the brain activity through the skull, it's hard to know where the signals are coming from and when and where the signals are being generated, because we still haven't understood exactly everything about how many millions of neurons are there, and their interconnectivity and the pathways and all that. So the big challenge is, I think, can is it possible that we can push these absolute limits of the resolution both in space and time, because it seems that it will be necessary as we move forward with trying to develop applications and try to develop solutions for a lot of these health challenges, and for even for any other industry.
right. These are the things that is going to require time and patience. The user adjustments would have to be in parallel to the development, time and space. Um, as I said, the optimism level is very high for that technology, but all what it takes is for it to be in the wrong hand of one person using it in the wrong way, and we would have a disaster on our hand. So these things have to go in parallel mechanisms. The development, the security, the privacy, the code base functionality, the region. The region of interest that we target is very, very small, is roughly 1 centimeter cube, but it can vastly alter the functions of the person substantially. And in our case, we direct that toward the restoration of human dignity by curing the disease and disorder,
Yes.
and get rid of some of the neurodegenerative consequences, if you will, in an adult population.
Oh, that is really good. So the diseases that are under experimentation to be treated, to be solve the problems, which ones are we focusing on? Are they all like mental health diseases, or we are also looking at I read somewhere that there are a lot of advances in also restoring vision and things like that, and paralysis and stroke, and so are what
Our,
different diseases are in radar right now?
our focus is a platform that allows for uh, going after neurodegenerative disorder as well as other disorders that where deep brain stimulation has been a success. We find that over 100 indications is a possibility of a target use. We find that the data suggests that $4 trillion in mental health is spent, and we think we can actually reduce significantly this expenditure that is committed toward basically a solution that is sustainable and effective and chronic, and be able to provide for additional indications after we manage to understand the neurodegenerative nature.
Yes, no, very true. No, that those are really very welcoming, paths of research that are happening, and we would love to see, what else is coming from your laboratory. So, what would you like to tell our global viewers and listeners, especially about not only the initiatives that you're working on, but anywhere you would like to see the global, research community to focus when especially when the mind control technology, or the brain to brain interface advances, needs to happen. Where would you like to see those advances?
I would say that to focus all the efforts, or most of the efforts, into curing and fighting disorders and fighting diseases is the best thing that we can do for ourselves. No nation can survive undignified for long, and to see our elders suffering to the level of what we see in Alzheimer and in the Parkinson and Huntington, without any cure and without massive effort to achieve a cure, it's counter to the very notion of us being human. So it's very important that we unify our efforts into that focus. I would say to develop a healthy skepticism toward what is AI and what it can do for us, but not outright reject and fear the capabilities that is available to us for the use, for the good use.
Yes.
And once we do that, we can not limit our creative nature and propel, put our energy toward a constructive way of directing and focusing AI, as opposed to just outright fear it and reject it and not accept what it can do for us.
Absolutely. No fear. There is no place for fear when it comes to progress and development. All we need to do is, identify where the security risk can emerge and put, proper effective controls there, so that we are not, unprepared for what could come our way. But the progress and development, science, we have to, make sure that it goes forward. And AI, we are creating this, entirely new intelligent species, and we need to make sure that we can use that, the full potential of that for the progress and development and for the future of the humanity, because it's not just about the digital age, it's about the spaces that it's already, initiated, and we are looking at, different planets, and where we can, create homes for us, or we can do stellar mining, or there is going to be need for, AI and the robots. So this technology that we are developing is very, very useful, and we need that. Without that, we won't be able to explore the universe. Not only, explore our human mind, but also explore the universe. So thank you so much, Professor Howard, for participating in this roundup today. We appreciate your thoughtful insight on mind control technology, and our global viewers and listeners would benefit tremendously from the information you provided on the current state and potential and complex challenges facing nations and human health and diseases. So even if a single individual or entity can come up with an idea to understand and advance the technology and create applications to solve the problems facing humanity, for the human health or any other industries, based on the discussion we had today, this risk roundup dialogue has been of service, and we thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Howard. So, Risk Roundup, a global initiative launched by Risk Group, is a security risk reporting for risk emerging from existing and emerging technologies, technology convergence, and transformation happening across cyberspace, aquaspace, geospace, and space. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace, they walk together hand in hand. Though security is related to the management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict. It is not possible to conceive any one of the three without the existence of the other two. All three concepts feed into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security. So, if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the risk roundups, to watch the risk roundup videos, or hear the risk roundup podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com and do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayashree, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.